Bulls and Bears, thank you for joining me. It is Friday, April 8th, 2022. Really appreciate you being here. We've got some economic news to get caught up on, financial news. The financial pain, though, is going to continue to get worse, the cost of living, and we have more food rationing to tell you about. Now, before we get into that, to my Patreons, thank you for supporting me. Just put out another video over at Patreon. If you're not a Patreon, please consider joining. You can help support the channel. You get exclusive content, and you get more access to me if you want to ask me questions or just give me feedback or even ideas. And if you just want to engage, join me over there. Here is the link. Also, link will be down below in description. In my latest upload over there, we talked about a certain rock star that's getting backlash from people with student loan debt for something that he said and something that he tweeted out. And the video right before that, when I go over all my investments and how I've been doing very good, I'm up several 100% on investments this year and also last year. So we're doing very good. And if you're looking at making some money and taking advantage of this current inflationary situation, you might want to join me over there to try to see what kind of profits you can also pull out of these markets if you're not already doing that. Recent article here, CBS, parents struggle to find baby formula amid widespread shortages and rationing. So stores are now limiting the amount of baby formula that people can buy. Now this is very important because about 75% of kids, of babies, in their first 6 months of life are given baby formula. So 3/4 of the entire newborn baby population, pretty significant. And now we're seeing supply shortages of baby formula, and retailers, including Walgreens, are now limiting the amount of baby formula that someone can buy in one visit. So what are people going to do? Well, they're going to go buy one, come back a few minutes later, buy another one, or go down the street to the other Walgreens and buy another one there, or send in their kid or their spouse to buy another one, different ways around that. So I'm not sure if that's really going to help the problem. And that's what rationing is. It's limiting the amount of a good or product that people are allowed to buy. But there's always ways around it. So you're going to see prices continue to rise for lots of different things. We don't manufacture here much in the U.S. In fact, in the past few years, we became a net importer of even food. So now, America, we were once considered one of the great farming nations. Now we're a net importer of many different types of food. Not every type of food, because there's some things including corn that we still grow a lot of here, but we're a net importer of a lot of different types of food. Let's put it at that, which is pretty pitiful because we all have land, we all have dirt, unless you live in an apartment or a condo. But in every state, there's land and dirt that can be farmed. But instead of more farms being created or more farms being implemented, we have less farms, and we have more buildings, more concrete, more apartment units going up. So more people, more houses, but less farms. That's not a good combination, folks. Now on this channel, you'll frequently hear me come back to this topic of the cost of food, the food shortages, the farms that are going bye-bye. I mean, to put it a simple way, farms are having a very difficult time between the energy costs, the water shortages here out west, and the rising cost of fertilizer, feed, the rising costs for just owning land, and the higher property taxes because of the higher land values. It's all adding up to more food shortages and more rising prices. Now, the reason I keep this as a frequent topic here, one is because it's relevant to everybody. Everybody needs food, and the food budget, affects everybody. It's part of someone's budget. It's part of everyone's budget. And I grew up on a small farm in Michigan. We had chickens. We had, at one point, we had pigs. They became too much to try to manage. We had cows. We grew corn. And at the time, I just thought it was something that most people did. Being very young and being in a rural part of Michigan, a lot of the neighbors around us did the same thing. And until I took my first trip to Chicago to see the Chicago Cubs play a baseball game, I really didn't know that was not the normal, that most people actually don't farm. And several years later, a couple decades later now, I would have never imagined back then what we're seeing now with food shortages, rationing for different types of products. We talked a few reports ago about other types of products that are being rationed, not just here, but in other parts of the world. And back then, also when I was just a young person, I never dreamed or never imagined, more of a nightmare, but never would have imagined that farms would be shutting down at the pace that they're shutting down now because of the cost of living, just making it impossible to just grow food, which is something that everybody needs. Right, but isn't it amazing that we have unlimited amounts of money, these bills, the multi-trillion dollar bills that are passed to send money all over the world, but yet farms here in the United States are shutting down. Every city, pretty much every big city, even in the outskirts of many big cities, you see homelessness just skyrocketing. So we have to ask ourselves the question, why can we have endless amounts of money to hand out all over the world, but yet we still see these escalating problems here in the U.S.? It's something that I like to have everybody, think about. Now back to the baby formula. If you're someone that's starting a family, just maybe you just got married, you might want to think about what's going to happen if you cannot get baby formula. There's a lot of different ways to feed kids, but I'm not saying don't have kids. And people will jump to that conclusion. JJ said don't have kids. How dare him? I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is look at the cost of having a family, of having kids. Look at the shortages. I'm just asking you to think about and ask yourself the question, will you be able to feed your kid? That's all I'm asking you to think about. I'm not saying not have kids. And people think that's some crazy concept to even imagine that we won't be able to feed our kids. But look what's happening with the rising costs. How much higher do prices have to go? And how much wider and detached from wages do costs have to go before people can just simply no longer afford it? Before we see a spike in bankruptcies, and I'm thinking the second half of 2022 is going to be the time period to keep an eye on. Anything could happen. We see these rental moratoriums, the eviction moratoriums are still happening in many different cities across the U.S. We predicted that about 2 years ago when they first came in. We said it's not going to ever be able to go away completely because of the dependency now that's been created because of these so-called rescue programs. They're really not rescue programs. What they do, if you study this, they create more dependency, and then a lot of times when these programs are implemented, they can never be gotten rid of. They can never be ended, unfortunately. Also, with the rising mortgage rates, the home refis, these refinancings, some cases cash out refis, they are dropping, and that has been a lifeline for a lot of homeowners. A lot of homeowners are struggling also to keep up with the cost of living, just like everyone else. I know myself included. It's very difficult. The rising taxes, the rising cost of maintenance. If your air conditioning goes out, those costs are much higher now, and you might not even get an air conditioning unit right away. You might have to wait several months because of the supply constraints. So the chickens are coming home to roost for the U.S. We've outsourced our jobs for so many years. People said, oh, it's great because we can make these products overseas for much cheaper than we can make here in the U.S. Look at all this money that we're saving by importing these cheap goods. Well, here we go. Now we're paying the piper. More food shortages, more rationing coming here to the U.S. Baby formula is the latest thing on the list. But stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more as we progress into this economic Twilight Zone. What else would you call it? Are we old enough to remember the Twilight Zone, anybody? The TV show, The Twilight Zone? That's what it is, an economic Twilight Zone, my opinion. Please let me know what you think about all this down in the comments. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Big love, and see you over on Patreon to those that are supporting me over there. Link down below. Big love. Peace.